Hello, welcome to this week's quiz. I'll keep this fairly short, but I did want to give you a little personal introduction to Michel Montesquieu, the famed aristocrat from France, who was an early advocate for the Enlightenment, spokesperson, whatever you want to call him. Ginormous, can I use that, figure in the Enlightenment. He rejects his upbringing as an aristocrat. He rejects the privileges that he gets. He probably saw those privileges as, quote, unnatural, end quote. He was interested in natural laws and even discovering the natural laws that govern human society, right? Isaac Newton, natural laws that he was into natural laws that ruled our physical universe. Montesquieu is seeking answers to much bigger questions about human nature. And he's an optimist in many ways as well, but he's worried about the future. And he wants to use the history to learn about the past. Persian letters, let me just describe this novel that he writes that becomes, for its time, a bestseller during the 18th century. Not just in France, but all across Enlightenment Europe, and it will become the topic of discussions in salons in Paris and in coffee houses in London. First of all, it was written in epistolary form. It's a letter. It's basically kind of like a travel log, where these aristocrats from Persia, nobles from Persia, you're like, wait a minute, he's talking about Persians and he's European? Yep, he sure is. I don't even think Montesquieu had ever been to Persia, but he has a big imagination. He knows a lot about them. And there's a lot of interest in these exotic topics, exotic meaning non-European, foreign. And you can see why if you start reading about or read the novel itself as well, because two aristocrats from Persia is the plot of the novel, decide to go on kind of a fact-finding mission to find out what life is like in these European countries. The opening lines of the book, some truths are not sufficient to be known, but must be realized. Actually, that's the opening to your own, the letters that I've chosen for you today. Uzbek to Mirza. What's being said in that opening from the letters that we'll be looking at from the Persian letters is that we can't just know truths, but we must realize them as well. We must reflect on them and experience them. And this is why Uzbek writes this letter to his friend Marina, who's been asking about the nature of friendship and community between human beings. And he comes up with this parable. But the novel itself, you don't really get a sense of the overall plot of the novel. The novel itself are these Persian guys, nobles, set out to travel across Europe to find out what kind of governments they have. Because they say at the beginning of the outset, all we know in Persia is tyranny. If you remember anything about what is going on in the Middle East at this time, we haven't talked about it too much because this is a European history class, but there were the Ottoman Empire and the Afavid Empire, all of which were kind of going into a period of decline at this time. And there was a lot of tyranny, although Montesquieu probably has his European prejudices going here as well. But he's interested in these topics and he uses Persia as an example because people are interested in these exotic topics. A lot of the letters are correspondence between these two aristocrats traveling around Europe back to their harem, to their wives, actually, in Persia. And the longer the aristocrats are traveling around Europe, finding out things there about monarchy, about constitutional monarchy, about absolutism, about lawyers, and the strange language, as they put it, that lawyers speak that no one else can understand, that they construct only to increase their own wealth, right? All these great sort of satirical takes on society as it was developing at this time. And this is a satire. It has funny moments in it, like when they talk about lawyers, for example. And it was written in satire as well to sort of protect the authors from danger of being arrested. In these absolutist states, being critics of the government can land you in jail or worse. So Mirna and Uzbek, who write a lot of these letters, the two aristocrats traveling around Europe, they are often critical of the governments that they see even in Europe. They're certainly critical of their home governments back in Persia. But Montesquieu, the author, can always say, "Oh, this was only just a joke. I wasn't being serious." Now, what about this parable of the troglodytes? Well, it is a metaphor, extended metaphor, a story, and the story is about governance and about perhaps the cycles of development that we go through. The Enlightenment thinkers were starting to think that we go through these periods of governments, but he's trying to get at as well, what might be the best government. So we go from sort of anarchy to an ideal society, and then in those final letters, they ask the king to be the most moral person around them, to be their new king. So if you're going to have a king, why not it be the most moral person around? And I'll leave it for you to read those letters and figure out what happens. Okay, I look forward to the discussion. Look at the prompt there, and talk to you soon.
Video recording button.